Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we're exploring something that completely flips our understanding of reality on its head. We're looking at a deeply fascinating explainer of a theoretical framework by Hakan Üçok, and it's called S-Matter and the Fifth Dimension. Now, if you've been following cosmology even a little bit lately, you know that our standard models are, well, they're currently facing some serious cracks. What we are unpacking today is a truly radical proposition. What if the universe isn't just a closed, isolated box, but instead a continuous, dynamic projection from a fifth-dimensional substrate? It's a really bold attempt to resolve the biggest crises in modern physics. And the best part? It does it without resorting to inventing new, unobserved particles or breaking our established laws. So here is our roadmap for the explainer today. We're going to start by looking at the current crisis in cosmology, move into defining this fifth-dimensional open universe, rethink dark matter, explore this wild concept called the hydraulic effect, break down the rules of the Projection Codex, and finally, look at how we can actually physically test this entire framework. All right, starting off with Section 1, the crisis in cosmology. Theoretical patches in the standard model. To really understand why a completely new framework is even being proposed, we first have to ask ourselves, is our standard model of the universe, the lambda CDM model, fundamentally broken? Are we just patching a sinking ship? Standard cosmology has honestly done an incredible job of modeling the universe's history, but the source text points out that it now relies heavily on disjointed theoretical patches. Think about it. You have an initial singularity that literally breaks physics, you've got dark matter particles we've never actually found, and dark energy driving acceleration out of nowhere. And lately, those cracks are getting wider. The recent DE's SI 2025 data strongly suggests that dark energy might actually be evolving over time, which a constant lambda really struggles with. But even more pressing is the Hubble tension. We are looking at a massive 6 sigma discrepancy here. That means the math is wildly, undeniably off in how fast the universe is expanding, depending on how we measure it. When we contrast these current enigmas with Üçok's new 5D framework, things get incredibly interesting. Take the vacuum mismatch, for example. In standard physics, quantum predictions overpredict vacuum energy by 120 orders of magnitude. It's famously the ultimate cosmic accounting error. This new framework solves this by deriving the effective cosmological constant from an actual physical 5D dimensional flow, not just 4D vacuum fluctuations. Or take evolving dark energy, where a constant lambda totally fails that new DC data. Well, this model proposes a dynamic inflow of something called S energy. And what about that stubborn Hubble tension? Instead of assuming the universe expands completely homogeneously, the framework suggests expansion actually varies locally depending on density. The whole goal here is to replace those disparate, messy patches with a unified underlying physical cause. Let's move right along to Section 2, a fifth-dimensional open universe, moving beyond a closed system. To really grasp this framework, we actually have to completely unlearn how we picture higher dimensions. Forget about a hidden spatial direction you could just point to if you could perceive it. The author defines the fifth dimension as a timeless, non-geometric state domain. In this state, basic concepts like distance, time, before, or after, they just do not apply. It is a domain of perfect ontological coincidence at absolute zero. What does that mean in simpler terms? It's a state of pure, timeless potential. Imagine this vast reservoir of infinite potentiality where everything just exists in superposition. Our 4D universe, the reality you and I experience every day, is, according to this text, continuously projected out of this timeless 5D substrate. So the universe isn't a closed box that evolved from a single past explosion. It is actively being instantiated right now, all the time. So what exactly is flowing from this fifth dimension? The framework calls it S energy. This is defined as the fundamental non-quantized meta-field substrate. Basically, it's the raw material driving the dimensional flow into our 4D projection. Think of it kind of like this. If the 5D domain is a vast, timeless ocean of pure potential, our 4D universe is an active current fully embedded within that ocean. S energy manifests in our 4D reality is all the energy and matter we interact with. But importantly, it drives a bidirectional flow. Energy and information flow into our reality, and as we're going to see in a second, they also find ways to exit right back into the 5D state. Which brings us to Section 3, rethinking dark matter, from invisible particles to cosmic scaffolding. Okay, this is a crucial part. How does this framework handle the invisible phenomena in our universe? Let's compare standard dark matter, which is often theorized as WIMPs, weakly interacting massive particles. Now, we've spent literally decades looking for these distinct heavy particles that supposedly hold our galaxies together, and we've found absolutely nothing. Üçok's framework says, let's abandon the particle hunt entirely. It reinterprets dark matter as S-matter. Now, S-matter is not a particle you can catch in an underground detector. It is a geometric shadow of 5D S energy. It is projecting raw gravitational curvature, metric stress, literally bending the fabric of space to support these galaxies. It acts as a cosmic scaffolding. So it perfectly explains galaxy rotation curves and gravitational lensing entirely without needing any exotic, invisible ghost particles.
And this next part brilliantly illustrates what happens when things get way too dense. Because if S energy is continuously flowing in, right, where does it go? The framework radically reinterprets black holes. Instead of true singularities where all our math just tragically breaks down, black holes are seen as resolution points. Let's use a tech analogy. Think of our 4D universe as a highly complex software projection. A black hole is the physical spot where that projection exceeds its density or complexity limits. It effectively crashes. It's literally a cosmic blue screen of death. At these resolution points, sequential time stops, and the information and mass revert back into that timeless 5D state. This elegantly, and I mean beautifully, addresses the famous black hole information paradox. The information isn't permanently destroyed, it's simply returned to the 5D reservoir via stagnation, keeping total system conservation perfectly intact without violating quantum mechanics.
Moving on to Section 4, the hydraulic effect, an active, density-dependent inflow. Just as S-matter entirely replaces dark matter, the framework proposes a completely new alternative to dark energy. Standard cosmology relies on dark energy, treating it like a static, homogeneous constant that just drives the acceleration of the universe. It's basically treated as a property of empty 4D space. Üçok replaces this with what he coined the hydraulic effect, because remember, the universe is an open system here, so it experiences a continuous, dynamic inflow of S energy from that 5D reservoir. This inflow creates physical pressure on the space-time metric, very much like fluid dynamics. It literally physically stretches the metric from the outside in. It's an active, ongoing permeation, not just some static background constant. And the author doesn't just leave this as some abstract philosophical idea. He actually did the math and puts real numbers to it. The framework calculates that to exactly match the observed late-time acceleration of our universe, this S energy must be flowing in at a very specific net rate. That rate is approximately 4.3 times 10 to the negative 44 kilograms per cubic meter per second. Now that is a tiny, tiny trickle on a small scale, but this precise quantification really elevates the whole framework to the level of precision cosmology. It offers a mathematically robust alternative to the standard cosmological constant, which, as we know, currently overpredicts vacuum energy so drastically it's almost embarrassing. Now, here is where this theory practically solves one of our biggest modern headaches, the Hubble tension. The inflow of S energy we just talked about, it isn't uniform everywhere. It's governed by a hydraulic balance, meaning the flux is highest in the empty spaces, the vast, sprawling cosmic voids of our universe. These voids effectively act as the primary inflow valves. Because of this, the framework calculates that these low-density void regions experience a physical boost, actually expanding 8 to 12% faster than highly dense regions, like where our galaxy is. Boom! This completely reframes the Hubble tension. The differing measurements of the universe's expansion aren't because we have faulty equipment or bad data. They are a natural, completely required feature of a universe where expansion is driven by a density-dependent hydraulic flow. Let's look at Section 5, Rules of the Projection Codex, the laws governing reality's rendering.
So if our 4D reality is a projection from a timeless 5D state, there have to be rules governing how that rendering actually happens without just dissolving into total chaos, right? The author calls this the Projection Codex. Think of it as a guided tour through reality's source code. First up is logical non-contradiction. This just ensures no mutually exclusive states project simultaneously, so we avoid paradoxes. Next is the minimal complexity path, which favors configurations that minimize global complexity, very akin to the principle of least action in standard physics. Then we have finite resolution. This limits the informational detail of the universe and actually naturally gives rise to quantum uncertainty. It frames it as a rendering limit, not fundamental randomness. Fourth is critical complexity reversion, which is exactly what we saw with black holes. When density gets too high, the system crashes and info reverts to 5D. And finally, structural duality, which dictates how the universe physically builds its structures.
Let's look a little closer at that last rule, structural duality, because it's super relevant right now. In standard cosmology, we assume everything forms bottom-up, meaning gas slowly clumps into stars, those stars slowly merge into small galaxies, and so on. But recent telescope data, especially from the James Webb Space Telescope, shows massive, fully formed galaxies existing way too early in the universe for that slow process to make any sense. This framework introduces the dual-mode formation principle. It argues that the universe actually builds structures using both methods simultaneously. In the early universe, or out in vast open void spaces, it heavily favors top-down structuring, rapidly projecting large-scale structures, voids, and massive gravitational sinks all at once. Then, as spacetime stabilizes locally, it continuously reweights toward bottom-up aggregation, allowing for that slow, hierarchical formation of stars and planets we are so familiar with.
And that leads us to our final part, Section 6, testing the hydrogen floor, the falsifiable signature of permeation. Listen, any valid scientific theory must be falsifiable, period. It has to make predictions we can physically test. The author argues that we can definitively test this 5D open system model against our standard models by looking for the process of permeation. Here's how it works. Step 1, S energy actively flows into the cosmic voids. Step 2, because this is an injection of actual literal energy, a small fraction of it inevitably condenses into real baryonic matter, the normal everyday stuff that makes up stars, planets, and us. Step 3, this results in the slow, continuous accumulation of pristine, unclumped neutral hydrogen out in the absolute most isolated parts of the universe. This is vastly different from standard interacting dark energy models. Those older models only shuffle existing energy around, but they cannot literally create new matter out of the vacuum like this framework predicts. To quote the text directly here, the framework predicts a void hydrogen floor, a uniform, non-zero number density of pristine neutral hydrogen in the deepest cosmic voids. Guys, this is the smoking gun. Standard lambda CDM cosmology loudly predicts that the deepest cosmic voids should be incredibly close to absolute emptiness, totally devoid of new matter. If we look out there and find a uniform, non-zero background of fresh hydrogen just sitting in these voids, completely untethered to any galaxies or filaments, standard models are going to have an exceptionally difficult time explaining where on Earth it came from. But for the 5D S-matter framework, it is an absolute, non-negotiable requirement of the hydraulic inflow.
And once again, the framework doesn't hide behind vague ideas. It provides a highly specific, highly testable number. It predicts a condensation density of exactly 2 × 10⁻⁷ atoms per cubic centimeter in these deep voids. Now, to be clear, that is an incredibly diffuse mist of hydrogen, which makes it very, very difficult to detect with our current instruments. But it represents a literal testable boundary line. It is the line between a closed, dying universe running out of steam and an open, living universe that is continually being refreshed and actively projected from a higher dimension.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely provocative thought. Next-generation deep radio surveys, like the massive Square Kilometer Array, or SKA, are currently coming online. They are going to have the unprecedented sensitivity required to peer into these dark, empty cosmic voids with absolute clarity. The big question is, will they find this pristine hydrogen floor? Because if they do, it won't just be an interesting little astronomical anomaly to write a paper about. It could fundamentally rewrite our entire understanding of reality. It would validate a mind-bending 5D open system universe and transform the deeply confusing mysteries of dark matter and dark energy into simple, elegant artifacts of a higher dimensional flow. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep your eyes on the void.